You're tuned to the Leadership Strategy Foundry with host Neil Evans. In each episode, he interviews top influencers in the financial services business sector. One of them might just spark that idea that ignites your bottom line. Here's Neil.
Welcome to today's episode of the Leadership Strategy Foundry. For those of you just joining us, we specialize in helping portfolio operators and growth-focused companies identify opportunities to scale revenue and improve execution across their business units. Today, we're joined by a guest with a unique perspective on how startups actually move from idea to market and how capital, strategy, and execution come together in practice. Today, we're joined by Axel Tillmann, Managing Partner of Alpha Consult and CEO of the Pitch Global CVC Accelerator. Axel has spent nearly 3 decades working across startups, corporate strategy, and investment environments, helping companies scale, enter new markets, and connect with capital. His work sits at the intersection of go-to-market execution, investor readiness, and global startup ecosystems. Axel, great to have you on this episode of Leadership Strategy Foundry.
Neil, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your podcast. You're doing a fantastic service to the world's finance community, and love to help today with my perspectives.
All right. Well, listen, we'll jump right in. Axel, you've built companies in Europe and then transitioned into the US ecosystem. What originally drove that move, and how did that shift perspective on how businesses actually scale?
I was fortunate enough that I had a business partner who was American, and we built up a distribution channel in Europe. And that afforded me, starting in 1982, to travel to the US once a year, 4 weeks, meeting the suppliers, trying to brainstorm strategies that they may not know how Europe behaves. And it was the first year, it was somewhere in my gut obvious, I need to emigrate. I made that happen in 1991. Now, how did the America shape my mindset compared to what I know in Europe? And that highlights also where the difficulties of Europe actually lie. Here we have a methodology that we really try to understand what is the benefit for the market and why should customers actually listen to you. In Europe, you build something and you think it's nice and everybody should buy it. And besides many other factors why I prefer the United States over Europe, but this is my most eye-opening. I was blind to what counts. And who can better testify to the difference than somebody who became seeing and sees the beauty of the world than versus those who are born already a priori with what they have seen in their world.
Oh, gotcha. Having seen startups across so many industries and stages, what tends to stand out early when a company actually has real potential versus when it just looks good on paper?
I think if they present you the reality as they have assessed it correctly. What I mean by this, market size is an important factor, but you need to understand what market size means. I give you a recent example. Somebody said there is a $60 billion market, but the corporations in this market are 20 years going for that $60 billion, but barely touch $500 million together. That shows you that the analysis made is not correct. If startups say, oh, this is a $10 trillion market, but they cannot substantiate from the bottom up how this actually works, how they get their first customer, how they get the next 10, and how does this scale to, I don't care, $50 million revenue, $100 million revenue. It doesn't always have to be $1 billion in revenue.
Yeah, it is definitely nebulous to begin with, and then trying to, put a point on it, accentuate the reality of the market size, I think is a worthy exercise, but it's also an elusive exercise for most organizations that are in that sort of startup stage and needing help really to create accuracy in that market in their thesis or pitch deck or whatever it may be. And of course, that's where you come in, right? And we'll talk a little bit about your role with these organizations. So when companies come in from outside the U.S., right? Where do things most often become more difficult than they expected?
First of all, the assumption that customers in the US behave the same way as the European customers is a complete wrong assumption. We are dealing with two different markets. And by the way, this goes bi-directional. Walmart lost several $billions by trying to go to Germany and not understanding the special intricacies of the German market. Daimler-Benz lost, what is it, north of $10 billion by trying to acquire Chrysler and say the German way or no other way is also not working, right? So smaller startup companies or mid-sized companies from Europe need to have a new startup mindset that says, I don't know nothing. I make no assumptions. I have cash because I make revenue in Europe, and now let's apply this intelligently in the US.
So let me ask you, are there early signals that you've learned to recognize that tell you a company is likely going to struggle before they realize it themselves? I mean, you've been in this world for, 3 decades. I'd say that's a pretty long time. And those signals are something I think that you embody over time. It's not something somebody can say, look for the signals, right?
Yeah. Yes, there are several. Number one, if they are in the close to revenue stage or revenue stage. I have developed, and I had a great trainer. When my company was acquired by Arcside, their senior VP of sales was brutal, but the best in the world. And I looked at his methodology and refined this further, and I developed a sheet and an access table in which I force founders to give their forecast into this, and then I interview them. There's a very interesting thing. In the sales world, everybody is adapted to this typical stage, early prospect, going into trial, doing this, and they are very good to move the paw one step after another. But if you actually take the emotional test to it, and I have a 4-lever or 4 characteristics parameter for this. So if you're on a later stage and you cannot commit to the deal, I instantaneously know there is something wrong. So that forces me as the either evaluator or due diligence work that I also do to ask extra questions. In the worst case that I have seen, somebody predicted at June 2024, $150 million in revenue. But the column attachment, where I would have expected the purchase order or the contract to be there, was empty. So it's easy for me. Empty field, I asked the question, so what's there? So what it turned out, in his dream, it was $150 million. At best, he would get a development contract that would have lasted 2 years before the first dollar revenue would have come. So what you do, you throw that out. And once you take away all the veil of, I want to believe that I'm great, so this is what you're really doing, you have a big indicator. The second one is the team. Mismatch in the team. I don't know whether you ever show the TV show Billions. There was Wendy Rhodes was the psychologist playing in the office of the ex-Capital. And when the traders were down, they went into her office and she found out that there is something wrong, what was wrong, and sent them back with a remotivation. This same type can be applied to actually look at your team. Who cares about a resume? Have you ever seen somebody giving you a fake reference or a reference that talks bad about you? I have never experienced this. So we need to apply new methodologies and deep insights to get the best team and the best actionable items that they have under their belt, including also their forecasts.
Yeah, founders. I think on this program or on this podcast that we've talked many, many, many times about founder signals because at that stage, most of them are founder-led businesses, right? They possess all the cards, they possess the relationships, they do the sales, they do the HR if they're small enough, and you really have to decode those signals because you're essentially it's Vegas when they're that small, right? So
Yeah.
you're saying I have more than gut feeling that this person, woman or man, can do the job, divest themselves of those roles as the company grow. I've been in that situation myself in a really large startup, and at some point I had this much of the company, and then the CEO said the company's growing too fast. You can't have all that. Pick which one you want, but you're only getting one, and that's the way companies grow. And he was very smart about that. So it becomes a big thing. And in your world, what you do, I'm sure that this is part of your tenet of your business, both in the pitch side and in the accelerator side. So while we're here, can you talk about what you do? I think it's really, really interesting. And maybe just give everybody a little overview of what that life cycle is from taking somebody from here all the way up to sitting in bunch of, in front of a bunch of investors.
I like to actually start out by saying I'm sitting actually on every side on the table, or I have the experience from every side of the table. Serial entrepreneur, representing an LP side to venture capital investors, having run a venture fund for several years with $150 million under management, and now on the coaching end and mentoring end, Pitch Global, where I was afforded to actually vet 4,500 startup companies and
Wow.
mentored roughly 10% of them.
Wow.
And the CVC Accelerator is also a two-sided platform. I am motivated to teach investors something that they have never thought about. Number one is that anywhere in the financial world, and you have probably a lot of experience in that field, you have some form of mathematical objectified representation of the decision process, compound annual growth rate, ROI, you name it, EBITDA. What would you do if you only write in the, oh, we're having a good business and it's growing nicely? That is not EBITDA, right? That doesn't
Right.
show the financial rudimentary. So I have developed a mathematical principle, highly adjustable to any VC's desire, but it forces them to verbalize and visualize what are the decision criteria by which they are going. And once that has been established, you use the same mathematical representation and plug in the values you find for your target companies, and you come up with a value, 80%, probably not a good idea to invest, to all the way to 300-400%. Wow, that's a very highly interesting value proposition to invest.
Hmm.
And that's a mission of mine because I believe we need to objectify this. We need to quantify those types of decisions and not just deal on an emotional level or in a 100-page write-up.
Hmm.
Entrepreneurs, I'm teaching the principle of how I, as an investor, would actually see whatever they are representing. For example, valuation. Everybody thinks valuation is the only key negotiation factor that they need to drive very, very high. And many don't realize if you drive the valuation too high and you do not match the goals or don't understand what it means to exit at a higher valuation, if that is unreachable, then at that point in time, you may face a down round or closure because nobody's going to give you extra money at that point in time. The current AI hype, and we have gone through so many boom and bust cycles. You remember the hardware cycle, you remember the internet cycle. And all the busts is happening because we have overvalued most of the time.
Right. Oh,
Today
for
we are
sure.
having companies receiving money at $15 billion pre-money. $15 billion. You know what that means to make a $15 billion valuation happen? You at least have to get about $3 to $5 billion in revenue. You know how long that is? Typically 12 years.
Hmm.
And you cannot do this with any more capital raise because the next capital raise expects to have even a higher valuation, which means the goalpost gets even further away from you.
So, when somebody comes to you for the accelerator part, because that's the first part, so it sounds like one of the first things you do is let's get real and find out what you're really worth or what your value is, what your metrics are, what your goals are. Okay, now we've got a template to work with. Just could you explain the process of how an accelerator works? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of portco companies that are looking for investment, et cetera, that will be very interested because I think having professional tutelage, I have mentors, you have mentors, right? We all have mentors. Every, fantastic sports celebrity has got mentors, no matter how much money they make. So those companies really need to look at saying, hey, how do I get from A to B? Am I going to try to do it on my own with lack of knowledge or going to Google or YouTube to figure it out? Or do I get pro help? So could you explain just the process you take people through kind of briefly in an accelerator?
Absolutely. We are actually teaching the various aspects of financing. Angel, family funds, VCs, corporate venture capital, which is a rising force in the investment markets. They are going into the vacuum that many VCs have left behind, where they want only the secure deal nowadays, where there is a certain amount of revenue already there. CVCs are willing to take a risk at a lower stage. And so it's very important for them to understand where is grant money going to come from. We have a grant advisor that has successfully, above average, made it possible to write grants that are also granted.
Mm,
And we then take them through their entire, we are analyzing their pitch deck in the first
mhm,
degree, right? And then we're asking all these uncomfortable questions because I think the majority of the pitch decks I see say this old vanilla total addressable market, serviceable and addressable market, and serviceable and obtainable market, and they are making that a percentage game.
mhm.
Yeah, so we are getting 10% of the market. How? You have never sold a single thing in your life if you tell me this, because I need to know which channel are you going to use. I just wrote an article on LinkedIn about the most overlooked channel strategy in the technology world.
Mhm.
The most overlooked channel strategy is unique to the US and it's called manufacturers reps.
Mhm.
They are commissioned only salespeople. You have to manage them correctly. But unlike the always hailed partnerships, we have IBM as a partner. So what does that mean to you? Nothing. You remember the old joke that is talking about the chicken and the pig making a business together?
No, I don't remember that one.
Okay. So the chicken meets the pig and says, I have a grand idea for us. Let's do business together. I give the eggs and you give the ham, the bacon for our breakfast business. You know, the pig, in this case, a startup company, gets killed over this value proposition because you can't take the bacon from a living pig and the chicken makes all the money, right? And that's for me an uncontrollable partnership with the bigger channels for which you are not prepared to go into. And I see this in the deck. I see these ideas in the deck that they either haven't defined sales or very vague about it. They think the people come miraculously to them, and therefore this will all work. And that's not correct. And that's a very tough process to think through. I did a spin out for Rico. It took us 6 months to get a deck to the right stage that investors became interested.
Interesting. So you're getting metrics, then you're working on the pitch deck, and then what's the next step?
And then we help them to actually approach investors.
Hmm.
We also are very supportive, or we are really asking for it. Let's go and put some customer validation into this.
Hmm.
Customer validation means you need to take your technology idea, and I go very open-minded in calls and say, hey, Neil, I know you're the IT manager for your organization. What are the current problems you're actually facing? And if I hear there that there is an applicable answer to the technology that the company is trying to develop, then I say, okay, I would like to talk to you. How much value would a solution like this present to you? And now comes the important fact. Would you ever have budget for it? And are you willing to pay for it? Yeah, if you see something nice, oh yeah, that's really nice to have, but I can never get the money budgeted for it, or I'm never willing to pay for it. If you get it for free, I take it, then you don't have a business. And these are very tough questions. Many salespeople even refuse to meet with the signatory of a big purchase order. And I make it in my sheet a requirement, stage 2. You talk to the signatory and say, you really have budgets this year for this, or we come back in 6 months. You have no time to waste. And I once said to a bunch of Germans, you're not in the business to make friends.
Hmm.
You're in the business to make business.
Right.
Because they always go out, the lunch, dinner, and the bills go up and hope that friendship closes a deal. I do not believe in that.
Yeah. So you're challenging them to say you've got to take the theoretical and you've got to put some ground underneath this thing. Get out in the street, talk to some people, get some anecdotal evidence that you can include in your deck that says based on conversations or whatever that may be, that there is some truth to the thesis, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in an ideal world, and I am doing this for a couple of companies right now, I have them collect either conditional purchase order or LOIs. Extremely well-defined framework. It is non-binding if they don't fulfill the parameters, but if the parameters are fulfilled, you are required to purchase the product. Otherwise, you don't have a need. I mean, we are not here to play around. We are here to actually do business together. And I want to solve your problems. And if I solve the problems, can I get your money at that point in time?
So what is the point? What is the point that looks like when they graduate phase one, which is your accelerator, before they move into phase two, which is the pitch?
The point one is that we have validated the pitch deck with a few individual investment calls so that we listen to the extra feedback, a mindset that we personally may have overlooked. The biggest problem is always you start falling in love with the people or with the company or with the product. And that's quite natural. So we always need to take a step back and are willing to listen. What does this guy have to say that is on the other side of the table, even if they are not the right target? Then the next step is they need to research which investor has the precise thesis which fits to them. Every investor in theory says we are pre-seed, but they mean pre-seed, but you have a finished product and some initial revenue. They all define this separately, and we need to really hone in and look at past investment and stages. It's a lot of research on the internet to find the right partner that understands your market and that is willing to put money at that stage in there. And then we need to look for references, which means who can introduce you to these people.
How critical do you feel it is that an investor is a strategic investor versus somebody who's in it for good, but it's about the money? Is it sometimes a problem to have a strategic investor? Are there downsides to that as well? But it always seems logical to me that if I want money, I would love to have an investor like Mark Cuban, who can propel me to the moon, right? But not everybody's like that.
And you also need to understand which vertical is Mark Cuban really good at and which vertical would he not be a fit. He
Right,
will not help you with a medical device company and going through FDA approval for this.
right.
And I can, I never want to have an investor on my board of directors that is no value. Money, pure money, is useless to
Hmm.
you. The board has the function to push and pull you. It's an extension to your management team. It's not your bank account or your ATM for your business operation, and you do what you want. And it is good to actually have a sounding board of a solid board. And if they are not, the real strategics are CVCs. What you get from them is not only capital, it's a complete understanding of your marketplace, and you have potentially your first client built in. And don't be afraid that your valuation is depressed by a CVC. It is not, because the end game, and I learned this in many interviews that I have held and interviewed CVCs, only less than 20% of all companies invested by CVCs are actually acquired by them.
Hmm.
Yeah, but you get an early start. Think of this as, if I have Cisco as a client, as an investor, I may get exposed to Cisco customers right out of the bat, versus me trying to hustle and getting to these clients.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
worth
Absolutely.
more
Yeah.
worth than money.
All right, so we've got our little company. They've graduated, right? And now you're going to take them over to global pitch. Okay, so tell us how that works.
So at Pitch Global, we have regular events that separate into in-person events and online events. And we have a selected, curated amount of investors there. And then these investors provide also their feedback. And by the way, not everybody that comes to Pitch Global has gone through the CVC
Right,
accelerator,
I
right?
understand. Mhm.
So there is more feedback and more criticism from people that didn't graduate from the accelerator versus people that come from the outside and are pitching. And we teach everybody, or we want everybody to know, there is no overnight sensation. We had probably a couple of occasions, maybe three, where investors right after the pitch were willing to write a check, but that's
Mm,
the exception, not the rule. You, I teach everybody, it takes you 6 months at the low end, if not 18 months on the long end, to find your capital, to find your match. Think of it
gotcha.
as dating. You think the first evening you go into a bar and meet a good woman that should be you go then to the wedding chapel in Las Vegas next day.
Las Vegas, that's I think that's what Vegas is based on these
Yeah.
days. Meet the woman or the man of your dreams and head over to Viva Las Vegas Wedding Chapel. That's it.
Yeah. Um,
So,
so the only people that really get a quicker check written is the people that have already 3, 4 times done, and the same investor is being brought back to the table. Hey, I trust you. You did a good job the last 2 or 3 times. Do it again. Also, that's a fallacy in itself, because they are no longer adjusted to the blind spots. Um, they are this level of invincibility, like a product company that always tells me we are the best in the market, is a built-in blind spot.
mm,
When you have that belief, you do not question yourself on a daily basis. You're the best in the world. Everybody needs to buy you. This is absolutely wrong.
got you. With just stepping, into sort of more an ecosystem question with Pitch Global and CVC Accelerator, you're bringing together startups, corporates, investors. Where does alignment between these groups tend to break down?
Alignment. I really haven't seen the alignment break down. The alignment with a startup breaks only down that they equal any investor to be any investor. So I had interviewed a VC from IBM Ventures, and she said 99% of the inbound emails are not even a match for IBM's thesis. So the real breakdown is that entrepreneurs, I don't want to say become desperate, but I lack a better term right now, and they knock on every door, even if I can tell you, I have had a company that they went to a trade show, gave me prior a list of investors and said, don't even bother talking to them.
Ah,
Then they came back to me and said, oh, we had one investor that's really interested, very interested, trying to prove you wrong. Turns out after 3 wasted meetings, they said, oh, you're not part in our investment thesis. You don't fit into our model. I said to them, so why did they engage in the first place? I knew this up front. They should have never talked to them, right? So you're wasting cycles. But what's worse, rejection is an emotional downer. Every single time you hear the word no, the entrepreneur has to pick themselves up again and not take it personally. And it only takes a very strong character to do so.
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I would say that entrepreneurs certainly do get frustrated and there is just no two ways about it. I think it's part of the persona of entrepreneurs to, as you say, get frustrated, pull, tighten their belts, jump back on it, and get out it if they really believe in what they're doing. That's part of entrepreneurship, in my humble opinion. Just comes with the territory. So, let me ask you a question about your own business, which we really hadn't talked about much. But as you're looking down the pipe this year, what's left of 2026, amazing how fast this year is flying by, right? What are you most focused on now improving, either within your own platform or in how startups approach growth and capital? What's your focus right now, Axel?
So there, I have trained a few AI models, but we will not commercialize this. But my thought system and analysis has gone into a training of, and I can fairly say this, for me, Grok is the best AI platform out there. And so I'm using Grok because I found it is less biased and has less information input restrictions. So the training model was better than others.
Hmm.
And I have had lengthy conversations via writing and trained it on my mindset.
Hmm.
So now I can quicker analyze companies or verify markets. What used to take me a week or two to analyze a particular market segment, going into the old conventional Google and going through pages and pages of misaligned information, is now a matter of minutes before I can look at the real data.
Interesting. So AI definitely has its real bright spots in analysis, especially something like that. I use it extensively in a similar mode to analyze people, to analyze markets, market opportunity, and I think that's really, really, really smart. So, you know, AI may take over a whole lot of jobs, but it's also going to help people keep their jobs, um, because knowledge is power, would you say?
Yes, I have trained, I have a fundamental main training sentence. The old Greeks knew a philosophy of thesis, antithesis, and conclusion.
Hmm.
So the prior or the a priori setup is I never want to hear only one side. I want you to bring me the thesis, the antithesis, and then you're welcome to throw in your conclusion, but I will make my own conclusion on the facts being presented. If you are only saying, I'm looking for confirmation of what I'm thinking, that's called confirmation bias.
Interesting.
And at confirmation bias, you're going down a very, very bad road. And you probably have realized this in your own interaction with AI, that you need to be smart enough to disseminate what it says, whether it makes any sense. And let's call it a discernment. You need to be a master of discernment faster than ever. That's what AI actually that makes with us than going to a library in the good old days. You remember going to a library and researching a subject matter by opening up 50 books?
I've got a library card right here. I do.
And you're putting this as payment into your ChatGPT?
Yeah. You know what you just mentioned, though, is it thesis, antithesis, SWOT analysis, right?
Yeah,
New words for old tech. I mean, tell me what you're good at, tell me what you're bad at, okay?
yeah,
And see if we could figure out how to make you better than the bad. That's SWOT, right?
yeah, absolutely. And when you really look at it, are there jobs to be lost? Maybe. Are there new jobs to be had? Definitely. But what it does, it will accelerate mankind to have faster churn on good and bad ideas. And not everything that comes out of AI is going to work. AI as the new compound maker, it doesn't seem like it invents anything on its own, but it may find hidden secrets written somebody on an Australian farm and brings it to your attention, and you think, yeah, Jesus, this could actually work.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. As more founders try to access capital and scale globally, where does the pressure tend to show up first? Is it in the strategy, the execution, the positioning, or potentially understanding the market, as you've just mentioned? Where is it the most difficult? Just going back and rehashing that idea a little bit.
Yeah. Presenting your idea that it becomes a no-brainer for the investor. That's the goal. You need to connect on an emotional level. I had once a presentation in which I said you have about 30, max 60 seconds when you open up to present. And then the reptile brain that is trained to see a danger shuts down if you didn't catch it.
Hmm.
The logical brain will never override the reptile brain's decision. No matter what you say, it will never be able to convince otherwise. Second, I had life science companies that are using a language of too much hypothetical. Yeah, this could happen, this could happen. The investor hears uncertainty. And if you understand that in the life science world, maybe 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 200 really makes it to a product level, and 95% fail between the mouse or animal stage and human trial, phase one. Most stuff dies there. Then what do I as an investor want to know? I want to know how you risk mitigated that you're not only 99 of the 100 you actually fail. How can you do this? Scientific articles in PubMed and others are a very good supportive algorithms.
Hmm.
Other people's opinion. Mouse trial is not going to help you.
No.
Everybody has positive mouse trials.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. So this is my final formal question. I ask this of every guest. I like to kind of throw the curveball at you. But if you had a magic wand, okay, and could solve one challenge within your own business, your own two businesses, or the startup ecosystem today, what would it be?
After I ran a venture fund in the past, the one magic wand is to get LP investment because I think we are demonstrating we have the best deal flow in the world. Vetted deal flow. Everybody gets tons of emails for new ideas. I see the people live. I can tell you after one or two meetings who is a good entrepreneur who could make it. And then I will quickly evaluate whether the idea has substance. And if we go through my methodologies, I have a higher chance of outcome. And personally, I do not chase the 10x, the 100x outcomes. There's nothing wrong to exit companies in 6 to 8 years with 3 to 4x and embed yourself as there in the board to be the constant available coach because you have done it yourself. You know where the pitfalls are. And that is my magic wand.
So the magic wand is more LP?
LPs, yes. We don't have a fund. I would like to reestablish a fund
No.
and invest into what I believe and invest into the methodology that I have developed.
I have a funny follow-up question. Have you ever fired anybody in your accelerator where you just literally said, this just ain't going to work for you. Here's your money back.
Here's the funny part. Most people quit on their own. So there you have I fired as a manager? That is an interesting question, and I became very harsh on that. At one point in time, I said, we made a mistake. 4 weeks in, and I kept going with the guy because my co-founder said, no, I'll give him a little bit more chance. Big mistake. He disrupted the company, and the company didn't make it. That was one of the core reasons. On the second time around, I came across somebody who wanted to also only create trouble. I handed him the paper the next day. No questions asked, no apologies sought. Thank you very much for your service, but we are better separating right now. That's what life teaches you.
Yeah.
The accelerator, I didn't have to fire anybody, but you're raising a valid question. Once you fall in love, that's a pitfall of some investors. Once you fall in love with a company, especially angel investors, you might throw extra money, good money after bad. You need to be emotionally detached from your investment and only look at it at the objective progress. And that's where I mentioned earlier that my mathematical approach can measure this every single year, whether you are still online for your 200-300%
Growth,
belief
right?
or not. And when it goes down, cut it. That's the only way you avoid to lose even more money in that deal.
Got you. Well, listen, Axel, do you have any words of wisdom to share before we wrap up to our audience? Either about how to look for investment, how to prepare yourself, just some final comments to the audience. And let's just say that we don't have to say it is your audience are folks that would be potential portco companies and want a sugar daddy or a sugar mommy capitalist to come and adopt them. I like to tease everybody. So, but you understand where I'm going.
Yeah. I come from an unusual angle. I don't know what you want to call it, quantum universe, God, I leave it up to you. I can only be a risk mitigator. I cannot guarantee that somebody else falls in love with you. That's the same problem that dating services have, right? You think on an algorithmic level, these two fit together, but if she doesn't like his nose or whatever, anything, blink of the eye, then this marriage is not going to happen. Same thing is true. I can think that you have now the best presentation, but I cannot say whether the time is yours right now to get the investment.
Oh, got you. Hey, Axel, it was really great. It was an honor to have you on our episode of Leadership Strategy Foundry. I'm sure this is going to be one very popular episode. and we're going to be promoting it everywhere. Most importantly, before I forget, okay, how do people reach you? And I'll get that Kyron onto the podcast, but could you tell them either your email address, your website, your phone number, whatever you want to put out there, and I'll get that attached to the podcast.
So the best medium that I actually look at almost every hour is LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/Axel Tillman. I look at every inbound request and I accept most. Some of them, which are too obvious, they have 12 followers, 12 connections.
Yeah.
These are all the deadbeat accounts. But if you have a check mark, which helps you at any point in time, I am graciously always giving 15 minutes of my time, because as you experience yourself, I make no a priori decision what is in the store, what the universe wants from me.
I think that's great. Again, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. It was really, really fun for me to talk to you. You're just so fluid, you're so brilliant. And again, it's an honor. So with that, I'll just say to everybody, that's a wrap. See ya all.
Neil, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed the session and hope you picked up a pearl or two. Just a parting note, of the many business leaders to whom we speak, we find that one of their most pervasive issues is about filling their pipelines with qualified leads. If that's an area of concern where your organization could use an assist, head on over to aisolutionsfoundry.com and book a complimentary strategy session. This is one of our many programs that help organizations like yours build financial value that drops directly to their bottom line. See you on the next episode of the Leadership Strategy Foundry.